Hi, this is Stephen Mead, lifelong entrepreneur, business owner, and global speaker. Over the years, I've read hundreds of books and spent thousands of hours developing what I call the BullsEye belief system. And I've used that system to develop my own companies, as well as help others learn to be specific, targeted, and focused to get exactly what they want in life. Again, I'm Stephen Mead, and this is the BullsEye Guy podcast. All right, Stephen Mead back again with another BullsEye Guy podcast. Holidays are coming up, so the episodes are coming fast and furious. And with that, what we're going to do today, a couple episodes ago, I did what I call life hacks. And it was 10 sort of tips or tricks or ways to help save time, how to be more efficient. And I had a lot of people that really liked that. They thought there were some good tips in there. And what I'm going to do today is give you another 10. So these are some of my best efficiency tools. And the reason I like these is I'm very OCD on time. I had a sales training when I was 22, and I joke that it was a cult, and I fully believe it was. I actually ran into some guys last night at an event here in LA who were in a similar training program, and we both laughed. And what I mean by a cult was the timing aspect. And this isn't one of my life hack tips, but maybe it should be. What we used to do, I don't know if you ever notice how quick time flies. And if you're not really paying attention, time really moves quickly. And what we trained ourselves to do is we would set a timer on our desk, and the new people, we would set it 20 minutes. And you would be amazed at how quick you're messing around and you're emailing and you're futzing, and that timer goes off and you have to think, what did I just get done in those last 20 minutes? And what you start realizing is you're not very productive. You waste a lot of time, mental thoughts, brain farts, tangents. And what you start doing is training yourself to where eventually we had our timer down to 5 minutes, and we were so neurotic, we were taught how to be the most efficient every minute of the day. Now, I'm not saying that's the best answer because I think it messed me up in a lot of ways. I'm so neurotic on time, but it is an interesting example of how to train yourself of how to be productive, because time flies, dates fly, things along that line. So I think that was a bonus tip. That wasn't the one we're going to start with. Number one, actually, I do a lot of speaking at colleges and universities. My friend Seth Shapiro, who is at USC, great professor. Every time I'm there talking to the students, he always says, Stephen, you have to show them ACT. You have to show them how you manage your contacts. How do you manage your database? And in my phone, I've got a couple of them here. I won't hold this one up. Yeah, well, it's in the phone. I have 23,000 names, but it's not just the names. What I've done since actually about 1997, these names go back so far, but I have a system of how I put contacts into a database. And I'm going to share that with you. I'm not saying it's perfect for everybody, but it is a very unique way to do this. I use a tool called ACT, A-C-T. It's a contact management database. Outlook doesn't work efficiently or effectively for the way this is. There's another cool tool out I've tried to use. I wanted to get better. It's local here in LA. It's called Nimble. Again, these are what are called CRM, contact relation management tools. But basically what I do whenever I meet somebody is if I come back from an event, now I've got help, but I have a stack of business cards. When I enter in somebody's name, I put them into the database ACT, which is on my computer. It's on my main desktop. But there's a couple little tips and hacks I do in there. One of them, again, this is just my own process and system. You can have your own. One of the things I do is I have a field called user 4. It was just a database field, but in that user 4 field, whenever I meet someone, I put notes in there. Where did I meet them? What were they wearing? What did we talk about? Where were they sitting? Were they at a table to my left, to my right? I put in all kinds of triggers and visual cues. So when I go back, I can go back to people I met 10, 15 years ago. And the way our mind works is it produces a visual recall. So I take notes of who I met, where I met them. Kind of a weird thing, but I can pull up notes again and go, oh, I met you. I just did this Again, last night, a friend of mine, Michael Healy, invited me to a great event. And one of the guys said, how did you meet Michael? And I couldn't remember. There were so many events. I pulled it up in my phone. Oh, we met in Puerto Rico. We were at this event. We were at this dinner. Michael sat to my left. Here's who invited me. So again, it's this aspect of visual recall. User 4. Then I also have a field referred by. Again, if you've heard me talk, I'm a big proponent of what I call the 3 C's: contact, credits, compensation. Credit is how did you meet somebody, who invited you. And in this field, I have referred by, so I can go through and go, oh, who referred me to this person? Here's who I referred me to him. Here's where I met him. If I met him through a referral at an event, I have this in the database field. And then I have people organized in groups. Again, getting very granular. Now I have groups set up based on company. Is it Big Bamboo, our parent company? Is it Moneto Pro, the blockchain? Is it Magmo, the social tool? Is it Thanks for Your Service, which I've talked about? I've got a top level group where I can instantly pull them up. Then within there, I have a whole set of subgroups. Again, this may be too deep. The people that are in sales or like this stuff, this will really help. Within ACT, I now have groups. And I have one group that is entertainment. I have another one that's technology. I have another one that's press. And then I have a California group. And in California, I have Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, Orange County. I've got a Missouri group. I've got a New York group. I've got these things based on groups and locations. So if I'm going to New York, I can go into my database, pull up the New York area. And it's not just New York. I actually have DC, Boston, the whole surrounding area. I can pull up 2,000 people in and around New York, instantly view them, and know who's in that area or location I'm going into. Have the same thing for a Monaco group, a Malta group. So again, I've taken a lot of time and effort, but putting this in, it's a Stephen Covey principle: begin with the end in mind, right? And then sharpen the saw. It takes time to enter all this into a database. I used to come back on trips and I'd be on a flight with a stack of business cards. It takes hours, but those are hours well spent to help you if you're using business and sales. So that's how I manage my database. Kind of interesting. Leads to step 2. I tried to sort of put these in order. They're not going to flow perfectly, but again, in my 10 steps, we talked about the BullsEye belief system. Step 2 is WIFU with them. What's in it for you? What's in it for me? What I want to talk about is what's called the power of you. And again, some of these things I've lightly touched on before. I'll go a little bit deeper, but it's a fun story that whenever you come back from an event, a lot of us that are doing, again, these are business networking techniques and tips. You come back from an event and you say, oh, dear so-and-so, I was at this event and I met you and we talked about, and I talked about. We start with I as opposed to you. What I want you to try and do is, if you come back from an event, if you met somebody, if you're following up, try and start, and again, it sounds weird and looks weird, try and start your email with the word you at least 3 out of the first 4 sentences. So when I come back, my email might be something along the lines of, Dear Eagle. Swedish is Eagle's sitting here with me. He's always off camera, laughing and smiling. And again, Groove Radio station, downtown LA. I love it. But if I had met him at his event, they just had their 25-year anniversary not too long ago, and great stuff. I wouldn't say I met you at your event. I'd say you and I met at your 25-year anniversary. You were on stage with all the DJs. You did an amazing job. You talked about these things. You mentioned you're trying to get more people at the studio. I'd love to talk to you about it. It's about you. Even though I may want to talk to him, it wasn't I. It's you. So leading with you in an email is a really simple, I call it a life hack. It's a tip. It's a synopsis that fires off a little differently. And I tell this story, I know I've told it before, but I like telling it here pretty quickly, is we wanted a meeting years ago with a guy who was former president of ABC, an amazing guy, had left and had created all these amazing television shows, Dancing with the Stars and Desperate Housewives. It's kind of given away his name, but it's okay. And my friend John Pattison, who I've thrown under the bus several times on the podcast here, I said, John, let's get a meeting with Steven, a different Steven. I said, I'd love for him to work for one of our companies. So John writes this glowing email about how he's won 4 Emmys and how he created electronic press. It was all about John, which is, if you know John Pattison, it's all about John, but that's okay. The email was this over example of trying to sell himself. And I looked at it, I said, no, that won't work. I rewrote the email in 4 sentences. Dear Mr. McPherson, you were recently featured in the Hollywood Reporter. You mentioned you'd like to leave a legacy for your daughters. You and I haven't met, but I have something that might be able to help you accomplish your goals. Love to meet. 4 sentences, 17 minutes later, got an email back. Love to. How about Pacific Palisades Coffee Bean? You. It was all about him. Now, we wanted him to work for us, but it was all about him. And then I did it once with some students because, again, I love teaching and sharing. That's why I do a lot of these podcasts. Student came up to me once and said, will you help me review my cover letter? And I said, I don't really do resumes. Oh, please look at my cover letter. And I looked at him in front of the students. I said, if I do this, you have to promise me you're not going to cry. Okay, I promise. Well, unfortunately, I made him cry. I looked at his cover letter and it said, I've done this and I've done that and I would like to do this. And if I came to work, I would learn all of these things. And I looked at it and I looked at him. I said, I would never hire you. What? I said, this is the worst cover. I said, I don't even read cover letters. It's the worst cover letter ever. What? But, and my point to him was, and this was to the audience, I said, look, you're trying to get a job, but you're making it all about you. The person that's trying to hire you is worried about his kids or his bonus or you being a good employee or you coming in and making his job and his life easier. I said, if you're going to write a cover letter, go research the guy. You know, say you mentioned in your corporate report how you're trying to accomplish this goal to move into China or move into I can't say North Korea, move somewhere. Go, I can help you accomplish your goal. You mentioned these things. I would be a great employee. Like, make it about the other person. So learn how to do the power of you. It's just a simple tweak. And now what it leads to is what I call follow-up folders. Again, simple. We use Outlook. I don't know that I'm the biggest fan of it, but we haven't found anything better. The Google email interface sucks. I have no problem throwing companies under the bus when I think their interface sucks, and the Google interface sucks. Written by a bunch of engineers, I guess. It's horrible, but neither here nor there. Within Outlook, we create folders. So if we're trying to follow up with somebody, if we're trying to do sales, if we're trying to raise money, a lot of times people don't always respond. They're busy, things get lost. So what I've tended to do is I'll write a great email. If I come back from an event, if I come back from traveling, if I'm trying to get somebody or get a meeting or appointment, I'll write a great email. I said, you did this, that email will get sent and I move it into a folder in Outlook that says follow-up. And then the rule set in Outlook is very easy. Off in settings, it says if you send from that folder, then write into that same folder, which basically means in the follow-up folder, I have all of these emails that have been written. Actually, I have my assistant Shaker do it now, who does an amazing job. But we move all these in a folder. Now I see all the email that I've sent. And every couple of days, week, whatever I feel is necessary, I'll go into the follow-up folder and I'll do the following. I hit forward and I say, if I'm sending it, again, we'll use Eagle because he's sitting here. I'll send the email and say, just send in the below again, hope to hear from you. And that's it. And I'll just keep forwarding the same email over and over again. It's like throwing darts. Eventually, they're going to turn and look. I don't rewrite the email. I don't get mad. I just keep forwarding the same one, and it says the same thing. Hope to hear from you. Just forwarding, see below. It's always the same thing. I've had people 6, 7, 8, 9 months later finally respond, and they act like first time they got the email. I don't get mad. Like, oh, hey, yeah, thanks for finding the email. I finally have time to talk to you. And I'm thinking 9 months later, it's about time. But I just kept throwing darts at them. I've got some people, I've sent emails for a year or two, haven't heard back from them. But if it was a priority, this would be my second hack under the follow-up folder. It's something called a follow-up phone call. I used to be on the phone when I was in sales. The number of minutes per month was 35 or 40,000, if I remember. And people go, oh, that's impossible. Well, again, I like to do the math, break it down to the ridiculous. The number of minutes per month I was on the phone broke down to about 42 to 45 hours a week. Now, when I was in sales, I'm working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Half of my week is on the phone, half is in meetings. It made sense. I'm on the phone 40 hours a week because my job was making phone calls. Fast forward to now, 2019, almost nobody calls. We hardly ever get phone calls. People are emailing and texting. I've had friends of mine. These are CEOs, Fortune 500, amazing people. You would recognize their names. Don't respond to my emails. And I'll go, this is ridiculous. I really need to talk to the guy. I'll pick up the phone and call, and he'll actually answer. They don't have call screeners anymore. They don't have assistants answering their phone saying, let me check if he's there, because nobody calls. So if you want to do follow-up, find a way to do follow-up and just kind of call people. You'd be amazed on that. What we started doing now also in the emails, again, these are like cool little hacks. Service out there called MailChimp. Many of you have probably seen it, but the fun part with MailChimp is you can create these really beautiful HTML emails, HTML newsletters. I'm not a fan of using the HTML MailChimp system because I don't want to put my database and my contacts in. It's hard to keep everything updated. So what we'll do is we'll use MailChimp to create the HTML email, forward it to ourselves, and then that becomes the base email that we're forwarding out. So I'm using, again, it's MailChimp service is free. Thank you, MailChimp. But we'll use that as an HTML template to create these really cool email. And then we'll use that email and just forward it out of the folder. So it's a cool way to kind of do these HTML emails and get things up to date. Within there, what do we usually have? This gets a little more complicated. This is kind of a fun one. I'm like checking off my list here. I'm not a big proponent of sending out documents. Again, we've raised money. I've been raising money my whole life. It seems like you're always raising money, you're doing sales. If you send a document out that's in sales, you have a sales document. Or, I could be a actor sending out a script. I could be a musician sending out lyrics. The reality is, most of the time, those lyrics, that script, that presentation might change. So the minute you send a document to somebody, it's potentially dated. And if that person is then forwarding it around to other people within an office, especially if you're trying to do sales, you send a great sales presentation out and then something changes or tweaks, that document is living within the ecosystem of that enterprise where that same thing gets forwarded around. That's become a challenge. So I found a way to fix it. Again, not everybody will be able to do this, but I think it's a cool way. We use WordPress. There's a bunch of cool website tools out there. Squarespace, GoDaddy has one, but WordPress has been the most efficient for us. And again, this is a little bit of a step, but just follow me. It's very easy. Step one, in WordPress, they have a media file section. If you have a PowerPoint document, you save it as a PDF. You upload the PDF into the media section. And then on the web page, you say, hey, here's my sales document, click here. So now you have a web page that has a link to that particular file. And then you have to download a free, what's called a plugin on WordPress. It's called Media Replace. And it does exactly what it says it does. You've got a web page, links to the PDF, links to the video, links to the file. Media Replace says, oh, hey, I updated my document. Let me replace the document. You replace the document in the back end of the WordPress system. Media Replace replaces it in the same exact spot. Why is that important? The email that you sent to your agent or to the salesperson or to that VC or the venture capital guy, that email has a link to whatever the newest, most current refreshed information is. So we share an actual web page that links to all of the different content we've created. And then as we update and refresh our content, it's always being done in the back end. Again, some of these things are complicated steps, but they'll really help you in terms of if you're moving forward. Another tool we use is called Camtasia. Camtasia is a fun free tool. It lets you record your screen up to 5 minutes. If you do it longer, there's some other tools out there you can buy and pay for. Some are free. But what I like to do is, again, if we're trying to raise funding, if we're doing sales, a lot of times people want to do a PowerPoint, right? So you're going to say, oh, well, hey, let's have a call. And you try and get people on the phone. And then you might try and do a Zoom call and you're trying to Zoom through a PowerPoint. And if somebody is seeing the information for the first time, it takes a lot of effort to get people on, show them the information. They may or may not have questions. What we do is we use Camtasia to create these little 2, 3, 4-minute narrated PowerPoints. Again, I just spent the whole holidays. Thank you, Brent Pavitovich. Brent was on a couple episodes ago in his book, The 3-Minute Rule. I actually read over the holidays, and some of our videos were 4, 5, 6 minutes long for introductions, and I had to rush and struggle, but I now have our videos down to 3 minutes. Why is that important? When we send an email out, the email links to a narrated PowerPoint. The narrated PowerPoint, again, is in the back end of WordPress. So I can send somebody in advance a 2, 3, 4-minute narrated PowerPoint. They can watch the information when they have time. They can look at it. They can have questions. So when we actually have a phone call, the table has been set with that information. And the other little thing I like to do on there, just as a premise for people, is the narrated PowerPoint says, hey, narrated PowerPoint, parentheses, 2 minutes and 47 seconds, parentheses, 450. I personally like telling people how long the video is so they kind of know what they're in for when they click on it. But if you do it the right way, you can send emails out, narrated presentations. You don't have to be on every call, and you can update it in the back end and always keep stuff fresh. That's how you keep content up to date whenever you're going to market. So learn how to use Camtasia. Couple little things on the videos. I'm not as good on it. Some of you, we don't always catch it on here. My friends that have a lot of modeling agencies taught me this. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see something really funny. I have a couple pictures out there. But before you do these videos, before you do pictures, if you're not used to being on camera, do the following. And if you're just listening on audio, you're not going to hear it. Then I'll explain it. All right, so what I just did was I just stretched and made the funniest faces I could. People in the studio are laughing at it, and on video, I know it's going to look funny. That's all right. YouTube's going to capture it right when I made that crunched face. What it does, though, before you do the videos is actually relaxes and loosens all the muscles in your face. So if you're not used to being on camera, just do a couple exercises. You'll look better. Now that we have all that done, how do we start getting information out? I love Tim Ferriss's book. I read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, many years ago. I actually met Tim in 2010 in Washington, D.C. It was something called Summit, the Summit series, which Elliot and that whole group do an amazing job of. And Tim came in. He was sitting at our table. Nobody knew who he was. I didn't know who he was and was all flustered. And he had been on a long trip. He was hungry, had one plate of food, wanted some more, and just didn't know what to do. And I was like, ask for another plate. Oh, well, I don't know. I'm in sales. I know how to negotiate. I'm like, well, just let's get you another plate of food. Well, I don't know. I'm late. No problem. I negotiated Tim Ferriss's second plate of chicken before I knew who he was. And he went on to write another book called The 4-Hour Body. I didn't know he was so neurotic about food. But the 4-Hour Workweek, he talked a lot about virtual assistants. And we use VAs. We use a virtual assistant. May is my amazing VA. She's out of the Philippines. I won't tell you the dollar amounts we pay these people. It's amazing what they can work for, but it's less than $10. Can't get that kind of help in the U.S. I wish we could, but they're amazing. But what we do with the virtual assistant are a couple cool things. One, if you're like me, you may not be. If you are, great. I get a ton of invitations. Not that I'm so popular. I'm just on lists for years. I get a bunch of invitations to events, networking events, parties. There's stuff going on all over the world, and it takes time and effort. I like to put them in my calendar. So some things are in town that I may or may not go to. Some things are out of town and out of country, and I like them in my calendar because I don't know when I'm going to end up in New York. I don't know when I'm going to end up in Nice, France. I like to have things in the calendar that I just might plan a trip because there's some event going on there. It takes a lot of time and effort. The process with the virtual assistant we have is very easy. Number one, we created a system, 0, 1, 2. 0 means I need this information entered in today. It is a 0 day. I need that information today whenever she's online. 1 means I need it within the next 24 hours. It's pretty important. 2 means it's an event that's somewhere far enough away that I want her to stack those up where she can do them all at once. I don't want to send a bunch of things that she's got to be in and out of a task. So if I forward an event, in the subject line, I'll put a 0 and I'll leave the name, or a 1 or a 2. She knows what the priority is. And then I'll tell her to RSVP, yes or no. And I put it in my calendar in colors. If it's local, I put it dark green. If it's within the United States but not in my local, I put it light green. If it's out of the country, I've got a different color. So I can instantly look at my calendar and see these different events. But the time and effort to put events in is time not well spent. Register and RSVP is time not well spent. So not only do I use the virtual assistant for tasks like calendaring and scheduling, now we're starting to move them over into follow-up. Because again, if you go back to number 2 and 3, the follow-up email folder, the email's already formatted. It's already been written. It's easy for me to have somebody else forward that email on my behalf, and I can start saving time and being more efficient on the areas I need to be. Another thing we're going to try and do is there's a great program out there called Haro. H-A-R-O, Haro. I'm going to give you 2 tips. Tip 1, if you use it, it's a great resource, but be very careful. Set up a separate email. Go set up some free Gmail email somewhere. Here's why. I love Haro, but I hate it. Haro stands for Help a Reporter Out. One of the best things as a company, as an artist, is publicity. People are always trying to get publicity. They're trying to get written up in a magazine or an article or a newspaper, and eventually you're going to hire a publicist or try and do it. Well, the inverse of that is Haro. Help a Reporter Out is an email. It used to be a daily email with about 3 sections. Now that email comes in with about 13 sections, and it comes in 3, 4, 5 times a day, it seems like. So the reason I was saying set up a separate email is if you don't, you'll get inundated with these Haro emails, and it becomes spam and backup, and it's overwhelming. But what happens is Help a Reporter Out will have a section, for instance, they'll say technology or social responsibility or music. These are reporters who are writing a story and need somebody as an expert to comment. So basically a guy says, hey, I'm writing a story on social media, looking for an expert on this or looking for an influencer. And you can respond to that reporter, and you could potentially become a source. You could get the free publicity, the free press. It's a great way to get free publicity, but you have to manage it properly because you just get inundated. So sign up for it, manage the email. We're actually going to start sending that out to the virtual assistant and train our VA how to scan those emails and source the opportunities so we don't have to do it. Again, it's about being efficient. This is about having a better use of time. And then the last tip and tool for the efficiency on time is travel. And again, I mentioned the guys that are on here. John Sutton was on here. Actually, that's how I got introduced to the guys here at Groove Radio with Sue John. John is my travel guru. The guy travels amazingly. Actually, he and Alex Lightman, who just had a birthday, happy birthday, Alex, Michael Turpin, some of these guys are around the world, are amazing. I don't know how they do it. Travel is tough, and travel planning is even tougher. So here are 2 little life hacks. One's pretty good. Got to be careful with it. It's called Skip Lagged. If you don't know what Skip Lagged is, you should check it out. It's actually only a mobile app. Skip Lagged says, hey, I'm going from here to New York, and a one-way ticket is $380. But if I were going from here to Toronto and stopping in New York, the ticket's only $170. Why is that? I have no idea. But Skip Lagged says, hey, here's 2 lags. Here's 2 what are called legs, but it's actually Skip Lagged. It routes you through a ticket. It works if you're flying one way. I mean, you have to book 2 one-ways. If you don't check your bags, if you're just walking on, you basically can get off at one airport and not continue that second part of the travel and cut your tickets down. And then the last one, my favorite one, Rome to Rio. Any of you that travel, if you don't know about Rome to Rio, you must. Rome, R-O-M-E, the number 2, and Rio. What Rome to Rio does is it aggregates all of your travel opportunities. If you're going from, what's a good example? If you're going from Milan to Monaco, there's a bunch of ways you can get there. There's trains, there's cars, there's buses, there's an airplane. Rome to Rio says, hey, here are the 9 ways you can get there. If you want to go by rail, by train, click here, and it tells you how to get there by train. Here's the bus. Here's what it costs to drive. So rather than having to find all of these different websites for train and travel and bus, Rome to Rio aggregates all of it together for you. It will simplify your life. If you travel, that will be a game saver. That, again, was a John Sutton travel tip years ago that we use consistently. So hope those help. Top 10 travel life hacks, efficiency. Yes, I'm OCD, but there you have it. Stephen Mead, another episode of the BullsEye Guy. Tune in next week. More great content, more great things to come. Again, Stephen Mead, thebullseyeguy.com. Thank you very much.